everybody? It's me, Johnny, and with me I've got DJD and Stringbean.
Howdy.
Hey.
I was gonna say, Logan, they can't see. We can't do the visual bit. Like, they don't see that. Logan, when I said his name, he gave a peace sign, and I was like, that is normally appropriate, but in this situation,
not in this situation, it ain't.
It's not gonna work. I just want to get started and bring up that last week I ended the podcast and was talking about rearranging the space. I am now sitting directly under the AC, and it's great. Wow. I used to sit in this corner, like away, like you can't feel anything, any AC or anything, and I would literally sweat just sitting over there. And Shiho sat where I'm sitting, and she would wear a hoodie. And I kind of get it, because you got this cool air blowing on you. Man, whoever invented air conditioning, I appreciate them. Mr. Air Conditioning, I appreciate that guy.
Mr. Air Conditioning.
Or maybe Miss Air Conditioning. I don't even know. I have a friend visiting from America, so actually next week, Logan will be joining me where I won't be here. I'm going to be heading to another prefecture. We're going to stay at a friend's cabin and be, swimming and having a good time and such out there in the mountains.
Cabin in the woods style.
Yeah, cabin in the woods style. And, but I went to go pick up this friend yesterday at the airport. And let me tell you, Japan has an over-tourism problem. I have been on the side of the tourists. I think I've even said on this podcast, beggars can't be choosers. Japan, these people are keeping Japanese businesses alive, and they've built so much of economy around this. They need to just chill out on being mad that there's so many people. I have been going to that airport, Narita Airport, for literally 10 years now. That was the worst experience I have ever had at that airport. Oh my God. First off, the normal parking lot that I've been parking, I'm just going to keep saying for 10 years. I've been parking there for 10 years. All of the entrances to the parking lot were closed because because it was full. But then it's also not full. I'm looking into it and I can see parking spaces, right? But then there's no way to get in, and they only had one entrance open that you could only access from the departure area, but I didn't realize that until after I parked. So I parked my car really far away and walked over, but before that, I drove around the circle 3 times trying to figure out how to get into this parking lot. And the third time, I was just listen, immigrants are ruining this country. These foreigners.
No, I'm sitting at a table with my wife and son, and he's messaging me this. And I'm just I agree. I've been telling you this for the last year.
There's too many foreigners here now. I am so sorry. I can't. This is insane. And then I finally park the car and I have to walk forever to get into the airport, right? I finally get into the airport. It's like a zoo. It's crazy. The amount of people there. People don't know where to go. People don't know what to do. These people are trying to help them. It was insane. I've never experienced the airport that insane. And I was just man, what is going on? Also, I want to bring up
what is going on with this country?
I know, what is going on with this country? Who are all you people? Why are you even here? My favorite though was the judgment about the tourists by the tourists, right? They come out and they saw all the other tourists and are immediately looking down on them. Ugh, these tourists here. Look at them. And it's just you're also a tourist. You're going to literally all of the same places, the same 10 places all the tourists go to, right? That the travel Instagram people go to. Y'all are doing the exact same thing, relax. And they're looking down their nose at each other. It was beautiful.
That being said, there are 2 types of tourists, right? There's the kinds that have been to a place multiple times and actually, or just know how to travel. And then there's the kind that it's every time they encounter something, it's brand new, oh, I didn't know I have to take my laptop out of my bag before going in security. Or oh wait, we can't bring water bottles? And it's every single time. As someone who travels a lot, it's annoying to have to deal with these kinds of people.
I thought you were going to say there's two kinds of tourists. There's Chinese tourists and everyone else. Because man, people like to throw shade at American tourists and be like, "Oh, you can tell when someone's American. You can tell when someone's Chinese. When someone's a Chinese tourist, you can tell right away from really far away."
It's the megaphone and them spouting CCP brainwashing.
Well,
that's typically how you can tell it. And defacing public monuments.
Those are all jokes, but also like a huge group of them, and like the main guy does have like kind of like a little speaker thing, and he also has like a pole on his backpack with like a little red flag on it so they can all see him. Let me tell you, they're eating the dogs and they're eating the cats. David.
They're just taking them up.
And as an immigrant myself, a permanent, I immigrated here. I am kidnapping pets and eating them. That is happening. Just want to let everyone know. Don't believe it. When they say it's not happening, it's happening.
It's not happening!
Right, Logan? It's happening, right?
It is totally happening, and I know that the city manager may be saying it, but of course he's not going to sell the truth because he doesn't want that on his resume.
You know what Logan and I are eating? Logan is also an immigrant. Logan, you also are eating the dogs and the cats, am I right?
I am. I even tried to eat Johnny's buddy once.
Yeah,
but he kind of shot that down.
It's happening. It's happening. Stay woke, everyone. Question everything.
And that's the end of this podcast. Crazy. It's just crazy that there's like no actual evidence of any of this happening. I mean, like someone heard it from their neighbor's like parent. Okay, all right, cool.
Make sure you like and subscribe on all the things, and we'll be back next week, everybody.
Speaking of and dogs and birds and other animals, did you see that Flappy Bird is coming back?
No.
I did see
not.
that.
What? Oh no.
Flappy Bird's coming back, and it's funny because like I had Flappy Bird back when I lived in America on my phone when it got taken down.
It was in America when you lived here.
Yeah, Flappy Bird was in America back when I lived there. Isn't that crazy? But also, I didn't really love the game personally.
No, it's just whatever, Like I feel like it's kind of crazy how viral it went. Yeah, but also apparently, like some company finally bought the rights to it out from under the developer or something, or they managed to procure the rights because of the inactivity of the original developer, and now it's being a Web3 like NFT kind of like Yeah.
But wasn't that like such a baller move that he made all of that money and then he was like, you know what, you guys, I can't handle the fame. Yeah. It's too much. I'm taking this down.
That's absolutely what I'll do. Yeah.
And then everyone's like, but I bought this game. How dare you? And you're like, actually, you bought a license.
You bought a license
to use that game. And, that's it. That's all you bought.
It's like the, this is dark, but it's like the copyright version of David Gale. It's kind of what it's like.
That, and it's like anyone who bought Concord.
Oh,
They're like, but I bought it. But I bought it. They're like, well, actually, it's funny what you think you bought. Talking about digital-only sales and talking about, buying licenses, what about that PS5 Pro?
I think that, like everything I said last week, 2 weeks ago now, right?
Isn't that funny? Because we were just talking about how it hasn't been announced.
Yeah, we were literally just talking about it, and I literally said, like, I think even for $500, that's like too much. Like that, there's no way they price it cheaper. But like for a console that you don't even need yet, like that seems like a lot. And then they announce it, and they price it at $700. And
to be honest, the first thing I saw about the announcement was someone commenting on the $700 price tag.
Yeah,
and I thought it was a joke. I thought it was a fake announcement for real because of like the price and everything. I was like, this obviously can't be real. Can you believe the horror? As I was like, oh my gosh, it is real.
I'm shocked. I really am.
I'm not.
Go ahead, Logan. Logan specifically wanted to come and talk about this.
Because there's two things. First off, you can always take it from the angle of, if you adjust for inflation, right?
True.
It's actually not as expensive as some other generations, including the PS4, when it first came out, if you adjust for inflation.
Here's the thing. It's not a full generation now.
No,
and that is the difference.
Yeah. But also, you also get into the idea. Well, not the idea. I, unfortunately, too, dealing with too often now. Manufacturing costs have increased significantly. It's not as cheap to manufacture things as it used to be, especially now that a lot of companies are taking on no China policies.
Mm.
Now, Sony, I don't think is taking on that policy, but it could still be passed on by other companies down the line. So manufacturing in itself is becoming more expensive than what it used to be. And also the idea of just like loss leaders, they're not trying to take consoles at a loss like they used to. They're trying to make money on the consoles now.
Nintendo has always made money on the consoles, and their consoles don't cost $700.
I don't think that you can make a console as powerful as the ones that Xbox and PlayStation are making without taking a loss on it. I really don't. Because at some point you outprice your audience, right?
Right.
And
I don't disagree.
Yeah.
The hard part is everything Logan said makes sense, but also I'm just not gonna accept the defense. You know what I mean? Listen, it's for a digital only console. Isn't the PS5 $400? It's $300 more.
Yeah.
Than the other one. $300. That's almost, you can almost buy 2 digital only PS5s for the price of the PS5 Pro, which, by the way, plays the same games. You don't even get exclusive, and it looks a little bit better. And what? Freaking come at me. Freaking come at me. Most people aren't gonna be able to tell the difference. Most gamers do not need it, and they're not going to be able to tell the difference. And it's just insane that they think $700.
But are they really? Is that who they're trying to get? Is the most gamers? Or are they trying to get people upgrade? Or are they trying to look at the people that, just like with PCs, you tell them, "Hey, I want to play this game," and then they tell you to buy a $10,000 rig. The people who are Sony fanboys and will pay whatever it is if it's the brand new Sony item.
True. No, exactly. It's the Sony fanboys, because we know that any real gamers don't play PlayStation, right? Everyone playing PlayStation, they play Fortnite, maybe they play a little Call of Duty, they play Roblox, and that's it. And so really, who are they making this for? Because all real gamers, I mean, they've not been using PlayStation since the PS2.
And you can't even you can't even actually play Outlaws on PlayStation yet. So I
know. I mean, it's really interesting that it's just a really weird choice. But again, I just can't. When did Sony become Apple? I loved all of the rumors that Apple was going to buy Sony, but when did Sony become Apple? That they're guess what? This is the most Apple thing I've seen that's not been Apple. Is they're we took all the ports off and we put them back on, and if you want them back, that's an extra $700. You know what I mean? It's insane. They're hey, do you want to have the Pro version of the console? Slide over another $300, and you can buy your own disc tray.
During their presentation, they had Cerny come out. Clearly reading from a teleprompter, but that's fine. Whatever. You have that happen. Whatever. I feel like they could have put the teleprompter maybe more in eyeline, so it was a little less obvious instead of below, but whatever. I thought the presentation was kind of lackluster. They talked about 3 different areas that the PS5 Pro is better than the regular PS5. Some of it sounds interesting for sure.
So tell us, give us a brief, so for those of us who didn't actually watch that.
Yes, so, including me.
The main thing that they seem to try to emphasize, and this is kind of what I was driving at anyway, was that so how when you're playing a game on a next gen console, current gen now, and you have to choose between quality mode or performance mode.
Yeah,
you're essentially choosing between the most detail and the best graphics or the smoothness of the frames, right? And generally, the latter is 60 frames per second, usually. So it's double the frames per second. And so it does seem a lot less choppy. And it's one of those things that I didn't pay hardly any attention to originally. but I have gotten way more used to 60 frames per second as opposed to 30. And I do normally end up like choosing performance mode over like quality mode nowadays. But I also switch occasionally because I do like to see the best possible like visuals. During that presentation, Sony remarked that like apparently like 70 to 80% of people choose performance mode. And with that in mind, their idea was, okay, so we're going to upgrade the GPU and essentially allow it so that you don't have to choose. You get both.
I love that. They were like, listen, 80% of our audience, of our people, don't care about this. You know what we're going to do? Let's freaking beef it up, baby, and give us an extra $300 for this thing you already don't care about. Well, let's go.
And for that to be one of the stronger arguments for the PS5 Pro, I think that's a pretty, like, I don't think that argument in and of itself is worth $300 personally.
Again, that's all I'm gonna talk about this whole time. That's it. All I'm gonna talk about this whole time is how expensive it is. Keep going.
Now, apparently they also have advanced ray tracing, right?
Can I say, if I hear the word ray tracing again when people talk about consoles or any kind of gaming, I'm gonna kill myself. Because I am so tired. That's so tired.
Don't do it, Johnny. There's so much to live for.
I am so tired of people being like, check out the ray tracing. And it's just like, we've been talking about ray tracing for 10 years. It's like, how many teraflops is it? How many teraflops are going right now?
I love seeing reflections of light.
Who is Ray?
Better. What
is he tracing? That's what I want to know.
It's Ray Skywalker.
He's in your console now. Ray. Ray is the thing that we are acting upon when tracing.
Like just when they say ray tracing, I immediately check out. I'm just like, oh, got it. Nothing. Yeah. It's nothing. It's not going to do anything. Got it.
Well, it's like reflections and refractions of light, and like the way that stuff reflects off like reflectable surfaces and stuff.
You can do a lot with $300.
I mean, that's all fine. Like, I do like seeing that stuff improve. I would really like for hair to become like better in video games. I feel like that's a huge problem. Now, that said, the latest trailer for the Veilguard actually seems to have like some incredible hair technology. And the last game that said that they had good hair technology was, I think, like Tomb Raider, and it didn't. It was fine. I mean, like...
But you know what would be cool for Sony to do, what we need, is instead of developing this PS5 Pro, they could have put all that money into, I don't know, like maybe another generic hero shooter game.
I mean, they could have potentially. I don't think that worked out for them last time, so I don't know if it would again. But, I was thinking, because we were really down on Concord, and I think deservedly so when it comes down to it. Introducing that game in this market, like, that's kind of wild, especially with, like, how much investment you put in it. How do you bury your head in the sand and come out with that game 8 years later and, like, not even notice that the market has shifted dynamically, like, by a huge amount. But what if the Concord comes back and it's the Overwatch we want, where it's like a single player, like, or even co-op, like, story-based kind of thing? I could see that as being cool,
It's like the Overwatch it would be like, we want, but not the one we need right now.
It would be like the opposite of the Fortnite pivot, I mean, like...
But I want to go back again. For those who live in Japan, which is just me and Logan, and literally no one listening to this podcast, it's 12 mon.
Yeah, it's
for those living in America, it's $700. That is a lot of money. That's a lot of money for something that plays the same games.
Yes.
Yeah. No exclusives or anything.
Here's the thing, exclusives. And I think this is the timing of it, too, compared to other, like, updated, within the same generation, but updated, is the fact that none of the games that are currently being developed are pushing the edges of the hardware that they're on.
This is what I brought up.
Nor have there been any major developers. All the major developers have not made games specifically for the PS5 yet. All of the games that can be played on the PS5 generally can be played on the PS4 as well. So there's no reason to really upgrade, because none of the games you need to play, want to play.
And Logan, we looked it up. I think, what is it? Only 40% of PlayStation users have a PS. It's either 40% are on the PS5 or 40% are on the PS4, but like almost half.
Yeah. One way or the other. Yeah.
One way or the other. It's a large number, right?
That trailing edge, that like, I mean, like we saw it a little bit with the previous gen before this, but like this trailing edge is insane with just how many people are still in last gen and have no intent on upgrading, really, unless they manage to find an amazing sale or something. And like, yeah, just the games themselves, you know, coming out. Like, we're 7 years into this like current gen, and like, there's still not a ton of exclusives coming out for this gen. There's a few, but like, by and large, like maybe like I don't even want to put a number on it, but like most games are coming out for previous gen as well as current gen.
Yeah, exactly. Like I was saying, is the timing of it is very poorly done. If they had done this a bit more, and I think this is partly to do with the life cycle of the hardware development compared to game development currently in the way it's currently going. If they had released something like this, give it a few more years, allow the major developers to develop some exclusives for the current generation that really push the hardware to its limits, then there might be a bit more of a reason for someone to go out and buy something like this, if they're that type of a gamer.
At that point, why not just make the next gen then, you know? Because then we're like 11, 12 years in or whatever to current gen. It would be about time for the next gen anyway. Yeah. When it comes down to it.
What Farmer and I talked about is the pattern has been around this time to do a mid-refresh, right? Like the last gen and the gen before. Yeah. So in a way, I'm sure they've been working on this for a long time, but freaking read the room, Sony.
Right.
You know what I mean?
But to be fair, this is PlayStation. PlayStation sticks to their playbook, right? They have for like over a decade now. They have this playbook. It's been, you know, they've made some missteps. They've tried some new things. Those new things have not worked out for them. Like, if I was in a situation of Sony, like, I mean, hey, if the playbook has been working so far and every time that we step outside the playbook, we get hammered for it, like, maybe we should kind of stick to the playbook, you know?
You're right. And I know we've spent the last 20 or so minutes hammering away on Sony, but I would like to keep going for a second. Picture this, D. It's 2013. Let's just picture you're a company maybe called something like Microsoft or something, you know, and you're like, hey, we want our console to always be online, and we actually want to do digital lending, where you can lend your games digitally to your friends that you own just a digital license, and via being always online and checks, you know, like DRM checks, you can actually lend your digital copy of a game to your friend. Wow. Actually, in 2013? What? 2014? And now imagine you're another large gaming company, you know, maybe Sony, and you make the most annoying video that lives rent-free in my head, where you're like, this is how you share games on a PS4, and you hold a copy of a game and then you hand it to the guy next to you, and then it's like a little mic drop moment, and everyone loves it. The crowd goes wild. I don't know why.
It's such a stupid. Oh my gosh, yeah.
No, so we all know that the best commercial, and I think only Johnny would remember this. Remember, what was it? The Niman juice.
We can't sing it for copyright reasons. But yes, there was a great musical. But that commercial, that whole thing. So here we are in the 2024, the year of our Lord, and we don't have digital lending. By the way, Microsoft backed off on that one because of the backlash, which, by the way, how great would that be if you could lend your digital copy of a game to somebody? You know what I mean? How awesome is
crazy. That? Yeah.
Not only that, it would be like a mature technology, right? We would have had it for like the last 10 years, so like it would work really well. And now we're getting the PS5 Pro that doesn't have a disk drive, and it's $700. I'm just going to keep
it also doesn't come with a stand.
It also doesn't come with a stand.
Now, I did see this one thing that they were breaking down, and like they're like, okay, they're trying to just justify why why it would even be this much and why they'd broken it down to like not have the stand, not have the disc player. And they're like, because Sony's looking at all of their sales and they see that their biggest sales leader and profit margin are on accessories. And so I'm just like, no.
Now, like, in terms of...
I don't have a PS5, D. I actually have a question for you. I don't have a PS5. Yeah. So to say it doesn't come with a stand, I have an Xbox Series S. What orientation does it have to be if it doesn't come with a stand? I don't actually know.
So
does it need to be horizontal or vertical with no stand?
The way that they show it, it seems like the stand is vertical. But that seems weird to me too, because like if you put it on its side, it doesn't necessarily like, because of the wings, it doesn't seem to like balance well on its side. I don't know. Like the whole design of the PlayStation 5, I'm not a fan of. And also like for this to be just like pretty much identical to like the PlayStation 5 design, except it's got like the grooves on the side now. It's like, okay.
Those are $300 grooves.
Yeah,
the grooves that's where the ray tracing comes out from the.
Now they are like, so I watched a couple of videos explaining why it's so expensive or whatever, and comparing PCs to it and all that jazz. And so like the price seems right for the technology that they have in this thing. Like they're also using a new technology called AI-driven upscaling, which is similar to what NVIDIA does with their DLSS. But so that seems interesting, sure. But here's the thing: between the ray tracing, the upgraded GPU, and the AI-driven upscaling, it doesn't work on every game. It only works on select PS5 games that have been enhanced for the PS5 Pro.
So, D, I want you to make a YouTube clip after this goes up on YouTube. This is the clip. Why is the PS5 Pro so expensive? Here it is. Are you guys ready? This is the clip.
Ready.
Because they know you'll pay it.
Well, that's the thing. Like I'm seeing a decent number of like PlayStation people who are definitely not going to buy this thing, or at least they say they won't. I mean, we'll see.
Sure they won't.
$700 is asking a lot of people. You know, like you could literally get like 2 Series S's and a controller for that price.
I wonder if this also will make any difference. People will buy one of the systems to go send to their favorite content creator to give a review of. That is still sales of the console.
I don't know why. You know, James Earl Jones, is that his name? Yeah, right? The guy who voiced Darth Vader, he died this week. I don't know why. I just like someone at Sony had just watched like Field of Dreams, right? Like if you build it, they will come.
I mean, God, that's essentially what I'm feeling. They're like, you know what? We might as well. It's a last-ditch effort. Let's do it.
Yeah, like listen. But here,
what we were talking about before was that this is a premium product, and what I compared it to was like the DualSense Edge, right? Or like a premium controller, essentially. Like this is for diehards. This is not for your average consumer. I don't necessarily know that I've ever been so anti an advancement in technology as I've been in this, just because like it's like nothing really like needs it. You know, like I'm all about like when I upgraded from my Oculus Rift to the Oculus Quest, and from the Quest 1 to the Quest 2 and all that stuff, or like when I upgraded my PC, or when I've upgraded my console each time, because I've gotten like the Xbox One
X. I got one too.
Know,
it's right.
Like
it's right
I mean,
over
like
there.
like those were like market improvements that were necessary at that point in time, because like your base like generation products were being pushed to their limits, and so you needed something new.
Also, they weren't $700.
I mean, that's true. But PS3, remember, reason why I didn't get a PS3 and I pushed you so hard on the 360 was PS3 debuted at $600. You know?
Yeah.
Also, the generation that got me out of Sony was PS3 because it was trash. Trash, dude.
I played I did the PS1, then I had the slim version, then I had the fat PS2, then I had the slim PS2. I went all the way, and then PS3 came out, and it's like, no.
And PS3 and like I just again like how did they did it? They pulled in Apple in like a really weird out of touch 700. It's like so to make it about Apple recently has announced like new AirPod Maxes, 0 improvements. They didn't do anything to it. They just put a USB-C port on it instead of a Lightning port.
Which, I mean, if you don't have one...
5-year-old product, it's like, it's, you know, their flagship $550 headphones. They did not improve it at all. They're like, guess what, guys? We did it again. USB-C.
Don't the new AirPod Pros... Don't they have like some kind of hearing aid functionality on the new
AirPod Pros? Yeah. They're waiting to get certified, but they not only, because they already would, like, if you had transparency mode on, they would already filter it down quieter, but they will be like licensed hearing aid level.
Really?
Yeah, the new AirPod Pros. They're really moving in on it. Well, the current ones, the Gen 2 ones, it will be a software update. They will be good enough to be hearing aids. Which is pretty crazy considering most people use AirPods to destroy your hearing. Not to help it, you know.
But yeah, like I don't see a need for this. I don't see really even much of a niche for this beyond like content creators or like diehard fans, you know? Like, I mean, like, we'll see how it sells. But like,
I wonder
not
what
optimistic.
their cost would have been if they had just delayed, like, not the development, but if they had developed it and then just delayed releasing it. I wonder what kind of cost they would have.
Well, but how much development really went into it? It's like this. It looks the same. The inside is a little different. It's like it's so dumb. It's so dumb because they're like, listen, like, let's really not change anything about it. We've already got one with no disc on it. Let's just juice up the inside a little bit and raise the price $300.
I mean, when did they start? When was the official, like, when did they start the development of this? Do we have
we don't know.
We don't know. It's been rumored for a while. But also, like, this is,
Logan,
again,
you need to get a job at Sony so
too.
you can be our inside man. That's the thing. You need to get a job there so you can, like, let us know. We'll, like, voice change you and everything, you know?
Yeah.
No, I'll just be put in, like, charge of, like, the absolute, like, nothing related to gaming areas where I would be.
We'll ask you to speak in Japanese off the record, and then we'll translate for you.
Yeah. This would be a great time. So Sony... this year Nintendo, they said there would be an announcement this fiscal year of like the Switch successor.
Yeah.
They said that early in the year, and then they like brought out like for the Nintendo Direct there wouldn't be an announcement at that time. This is a great opportunity for Nintendo to be like, Switch 2, $400, guys.
Yeah, till March.
I mean, this would be a great opportunity. I'm just saying, Xbox, I know you have it in your back pocket. Release that Series M or a Series P or whatever you think, and like whatever you're remembering to call it. Yeah, like I mean, like shoot, like I would buy one immediately. I'd be like, okay, let's go.
The Xbox Series X Pro is $800 for some reason, and we're like, no. They're like, but for some reason, it has like a disc changer inside, so you can put in multiple discs, and it like chooses which game you want. Yeah, let's get back to that kind of technology.
That would be insane. That would be wild. Okay. Yeah.
If the PS5 Pro had that, I would actually think that's awesome. Be like, oh yeah, you can put 5 games in it, and then you just choose which one, and it like pulls the disc up.
No, what I need to do is get a dock for my ROG, but then also a disk drive, a USB disk drive, just to hook up to my ROG specifically.
You should. Well, so that's the thing, right? So I thought that they were going to make a disk drive version that's even more expensive, but that's not the case. You just have to get a USB disk drive.
Yep, yeah, which they already sell, but yeah. Like I
think now is a great time to tell physical media people that the disc isn't really a thing anymore.
Well, and it's crazy too because
you've got the 300 gig download update. You know,
don't forget, like for one thing, the PS4 for some reason didn't have a Blu-ray disc drive at launch. That was weird. But also, who owns the rights to Blu-ray? Like as a technology, Sony does. So I mean, like this is just all kind of odd to me.
I think really if you trace all of this back, it really originates
from the cats and dogs.
With Microsoft and the Series S. Really, that's the problem here.
So, oh my gosh. Like, there's literally people who are saying, like, because Xbox isn't playing the, introducing, like, a mid-gen refresh game, that's why this is so expensive, is because Xbox isn't competing and driving competition down. And so it's Xbox obviously, it literally is Xbox's fault in their minds. Yeah.
Meanwhile, Nintendo hasn't released a new console in forever and is like, 2 generations behind at this point?
Yeah. Now,
yeah, but Nintendo doesn't. We don't talk about Nintendo that way. We don't expect them.
That's true. So something did come up that I thought was interesting and tangential to this. And I don't even know necessarily if it's true. It seems to have been verified, but I mean, like, I don't know. It's dubious at best. Where there's battery icons on your PlayStation, right, for various like devices that you have.
Yeah.
One of those icons changed or something to look like a PSVR headset, which the PSVR headset on PlayStation 5 is wired, just like the PSVR headset on PlayStation 4 was. They since have removed that icon, but what if PSVR... This doesn't make any sense, because like they've stopped making games for PSVR, they've stopped pushing it. Like, this would be an insane thing to do. But what if, like, they're working on a wireless version of PSVR to compete with Quest, where, like, it can only work on the PS5 Pro? Like, that would be that would kind of make sense in terms of, like, needing this console then. Because it turns out that the regular PS5 can't handle it. But then you're adding another, like, $500 at least, for the PSVR onto the top of this. And that's like, what? Like, you're literally just searching for whales now. That's literally it. That's all you care about then.
Not even Apple could crack VR into mainstream. Like, let's be real.
The closest anyone got was Quest, and Apple should have been able to do it, but yeah.
I feel like Nintendo has been on this really since the Switch of, I don't know if, like, it's graphic fidelity or what, but, like, Microsoft and Sony keep chasing after and pushing, like how far we can push the hardware to make it look this certain way. And Nintendo has diverted away from that, right? And are more focused on a more stylized kind of look.
Yeah.
And it's funny because at the time when there was a lot more advancement in that, I definitely wasn't on Nintendo's side, right? 10 years ago, 15 years ago, of being like, oh, why did they make Toon Link look like this? Why don't they make him look cooler and such, right? If you go back to Breath of the Wild, it doesn't feel old. It doesn't look old in that way.
That's the same thing with Wind Waker.
Right? It doesn't feel that way. And because they're not chasing it, there's also the ability for them to keep their costs down on their consoles, right? Because it's not as expensive for them to produce them because they're not pushing out crazy stuff. And I wonder if they've made the better choice, because now, I mean, look at what we're dealing with now of just like, I mean, yeah, you can't play Baldur's Gate 3 on a Switch, of course, sure, but like also the Switch games, like the first party games that come out on it and such, are great. And maybe these bigger gaming companies should, with how hardware is kind of plateauing, right? Maybe they should shift. It's like the same thing with like phones and such, right? What big innovations have happened in phones for like the last 10 years, right? Like, at least that's like in the mainstream, like marketable thing, right? Like, sure, there's folding phones and all these things, but not everyone is using that, right? Most people just have like a glass square or rectangle that we use. But even upgrading from the Xbox One to the Series, because I did like a tiered upgrade, right? I went from the Xbox One X, which was like the pro version of the Xbox One, to the Series S, not the Series X. And it didn't feel like a big upgrade at all.
Yeah.
Right? And then I went to a Series X, but from a Series S to a Series X, again, it didn't feel like a huge upgrade. Right? And maybe if I had gone like a full step instead of a half step, I would have felt differently. But I don't know.
I think this generation is weird in the kind of blurring of the lines. And also like with the way that games are being developed for like last gen for so late, into the current gen's life cycle. I think that technology is I feel like hardware is normally driven forward by the software, pushing the limits of it, and we're not seeing that right now. And that's really kind of a weird place to be. There are a few games that look way better than anything I've seen before, which is cool. But that wave is only cool while you're riding it. If you're watching it from a distance, it just kind of looks like water,
I like that. That's pretty good. That wave is only cool while you're riding it, and we're looking at it from a distance. It looks like water. No, that's so true.
Yeah.
I don't have a 4K TV still, right? All of those kinds of things. To me, a lot of these upgrades and such just seem unnecessary.
Sure.
And kind of overly done and overly focused on in this weird way. And so, yeah, no, exactly. It just looks like water to me, over here, right? Of
I think
cool, I guess.
Specifically when we're talking graphics, I think that's very, very true, right? I think we get into an interesting conversation about how games could innovate other than graphics and how maybe they should. I think Helldivers having the number of enemies on the screen that they can have at one time is insane, right? I go back to Shadow of War, and the disparity could not be more clear. Where you enemies are only within 30 feet of you or whatever, and they pop in as you travel. And that's still an open world game that didn't come out super long ago, but you still see a huge difference, a huge distinction between the two. It's really cool to see more open world games like Outlaws, where an entire planet, which is a huge map, pretty decent size, and none of that has loading screens except for specific instanced missions. But again, also graphically though, I think my dad would be blown away, for instance, if he came back to gaming now, as opposed to when he and I were playing Rainbow Six on the N64.
Right, of course.
I mean, if you haven't been there and seen the incremental increases in technology, it probably means a lot more. When this kind of goes back to when we were talking about Elite and how that meant a lot to us or whatever. Almost kind of sort of the opposite, I guess, a little bit. But there's certain aspects of technology that are closer than they appear. I don't know.
Right, but I mean, I think it would be a decent argument to say your dad would feel the same about the PS4 and the Xbox One too, though. Versus the gen behind versus the current gen 2. He would still be wow, this is really great. Look at how great this looks.
Sure. Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah. Especially with the way that software, again, isn't pushing the limits.
Right, because for me, I think of I haven't gotten to play Star Wars Outlaws. I've only seen you and a few other people stream it, but it doesn't, to me, look that much better than... I'm not even going to say that much better. It doesn't look different to me than Jedi Survivor did.
Mm.
And again, sure. I haven't played it, but as far as just looking at it, it's it looks very much it's on the same level, right? Of okay, this is it looks like that. But it's interesting because to me, in my memory, I remembered Jedi Survivor looking very much the same as Fallen Order, but I actually recently went back and watched a cutscene from Fallen Order, and I could see, oh wow, actually they did improve. It does look much better than Fallen Order did. But I don't know. Star Wars Outlaws is only on current gen, right? It's not on the PS4?
Yeah, it's only on current gen, yeah.
Was Jedi Survivor on previous gen?
I think that's a good question, actually. I'm not sure.
Let me look.
I will add this, though. You're talking about this graphics and things like that, and that just not pushing the...
It was not on hardware. Previous gen. It was only on current gen. Sorry.
Oh, continue. Wow. So Fallen Order was, but not... Yeah, interesting.
Well, I think part of that is also pushed for... There, of course, is a market for that, but there's also a big market for, I guess you could call them indie, but large-scale indie-style games that do not necessarily focus on graphic quality. They focus on gameplay mechanics or nostalgia, which is, let's be honest, Nintendo does a great job of playing towards that nostalgia. I do a little bit on the side of what we call handpicking for buddies of mine's store back in Arizona. Basically, what we just go do is we go pick up, games hardware you can't really get in the US. I get a lot of requests for older Nintendo stuff. I don't get that many requests for PlayStation or Xbox. So I would say that, yes, while the quality and the image quality does matter, and it's not what keeps people coming back to a system or coming back to a publisher or coming back to things like that. It's really of the impact these games have on the people they're playing. And right now we're seeing more impact being done with lower visual quality games a lot of times than we do see lasting impact on high quality AAA games these days, I feel.
Yeah, but when you look at top games sold for last year, right? We've talked about this a couple of times. It was Hogwarts Legacy, So I mean, some of that is true, but I feel like AAA games they're way more expensive and they rely a lot more on being at the bleeding edge of technology. Yeah. But they also sell millions and millions and millions of copies if they're lucky, Or right. Helldivers 2 took off a firestorm for a bit there. I mean,
that's the key phrase.
Well, in terms of sales though, it still was tremendous, right? And right. Sales are really the metric that matter. I mean, for live service, you can make an argument obviously they want to make money for as long as possible too. Yeah. But live service is also a kind of a different conversation a little bit too.
But also, I agree with Logan to a level of, I mean, the game I'm playing the most and support the most right now is Cult of the Lamb, which, is not the same as playing a AAA, a AAA game. But also, just because I'm playing it, I mean, I play it and I talk about it and recommend it to people, but I'm not necessarily financially supporting it as much since I bought it, too. There's that kind of thing. Not everything ends up like Stardew, right? Where there's just this insane level of, support and such. But yeah, I do think that there is some shift of it, but I don't know. I think, again, coming back to Nintendo, it is really interesting that you can go back and play Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom back to back. And they don't you can feel the age in some things, but in a lot of things, they really hold up well.
Right. Yeah.
And especially in their cartoony style, or even the Mario Odyssey, right? And Wonder and such. And just seeing how much money they make, I mean, what, Sony releasing this console, but again, how much did they spend? 100 million, 200 million on Concord for it to just be pulled? Maybe we'll see these companies start to diversify how they're investing in gaming.
That's kind of what I'm hoping happens with Microsoft with the whole Activision acquisition, where instead of making 3 games and that's it, and continuing to iterate on those 3 games, that they have so much IP now. Why not actually diversify, make some AA, single A, almost indie kind of games, from that. I do think, though, too, I'm reminded by the 360 era when you had Xbox arcade games and then Xbox games, right? And I kind of liked the delineation, and it took me a long time to get over the loss of that when we launched into Xbox One generation. But
I liked the delineation too, right? It was even less gamer score. They were cheaper, and it was just an understood these games cost less. There's less to it, but they're still fun.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what I've come around to now is that, essentially there are games in, every size, every price point, varying quality. And you can pretty much find, a game that suits your interests, pretty universally when it comes down to it. And if you like one kind of game, then other games that you might like, because of that. And I think that ultimately, losing that delineation was probably better for the market overall. And I, like you were talking about, those smaller games, because they don't pursue the cutting edge, they do stand the test of time a lot better. And sometimes they're out for 2-3 years before they become a hit, Among Us or whatever, or Fall Guys or
Fortnite,
those sorts of games. Yeah, I do find that super interesting, and I do think that there's definitely I think it's good for the market overall that those games exist. I just don't see AAA ever like going away necessarily. Like I think AAA has its place too.
I don't think it needs to go away, but I do think that chasing it, right? It's like the way that people chase like the newest phone, right? The differences between phone generations are getting smaller and smaller. And the differences between these gaming generations are getting smaller and smaller too. It's pretty wild.
Now, my question would be, do we think that like PlayStation, I don't think the technology is there to even try to do this. But do we think PlayStation would try, if they could, to pull a Nintendo thing? Because one of the most egregious things Nintendo ever did was with the new 3DS, there were games that were exclusive to it.
Mm-hmm.
And like,
would
PlayStation try to do that with the Pro? Like, oh, hey, you can only play this game on this $700 console.
Yes, I hope they do.
That would seem like a really good way for them to burn a bridge. Right?
I mean, I would think so too. Yeah, but I mean,
before we get too far from it, though, talking about Activision and Microsoft did have a round of layoffs. I think that specifically were coming through their Activision arm, right? Like laying off people, still trimming up. I don't remember. I want to say 600, but I don't know. I don't have it in front of me. But an interesting thing, I started the download for World of Warcraft on my computer because a member of Nav has been playing it a lot, and some friends have been playing it, and I've been just watching them play it. And honestly, they kind of are selling me a little bit on some casual WoW playing, right?
Sure. That's kind of what I'm kind of like thinking about too. Yeah.
So it seems fun, seems super cool. The problem I'm having, and I'm going to make this work in this podcast, is that I have a M1 or an M2 Mac Mini. That game is over 100 gigs. I think it's 105 gigs. And I don't have the space for it on here.
Interesting.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
But it's that large, and I was like, wow, that's a huge game. It's that large because they haven't sunset anything. The game just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and you can always go back to specific areas, which you could not do in Destiny. That's it. That's what I wanted to say. World of Warcraft, you can go back, and they didn't sunset older areas, and you can go through the story and go explore that whole older area and do all of it, and it's still there. Unlike Destiny, which sunset a lot of those places. But it being 100 gigs makes it a little difficult for me I might have to install it on an external hard drive or something.
Yeah. Like that is really appealing to me. Final Fantasy 14 does the same thing. Like having a traditional MMO where you actually get to play through everything sounds really cool. I don't know if I could ever like jump in, even though I tried to get so many people to do the same with Destiny, right? And just jump in like midway through. I had the luxury of being able to play it all the way through and like getting to experience most of its content. And so I never felt like I was missing out. And like that can be rough. I think that like with the way that Destiny has implemented their MMO strategy or whatever, that's a mistake. Like at the very least, they should like have some kind of like a way of like at least accessing the story from those previous things. The layoffs are tragic. I don't like this like whole we found like 650 more jobs that we could cut. That sucks, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it's not as bad as it was earlier this year.
Right.
But it's still not great. Yeah.
Yeah. Like this is what happens in mergers, and it sucks, and it's the bad part about mergers. I don't necessarily know that like Activision would have done too much better when it came down to it, because a lot of this probably has to do with like how much Activision expanded over the past few years, and a lot of this probably also has to do with the fact that Microsoft now has like resources that they can deploy instead of using Activision's and like save money that way. That was unfortunate. The other thing that also got me upset was something that affects more like gamers. Johnny, are you ready to get angry?
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
They took away like 5 or 6 games from Game Pass Standard, which just launched this week.
Game Pass Standard. Oh my god.
So now Diablo 4, Act 1, and Starfield are amongst like the games that you can't play on Game Pass Standard for some reason.
What?
Like, it like.
You know, you either
really bizarre.
You either die the hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. What is going on over there?
Yeah.
How can you drop this when we're at 57 minutes and we got to wrap up? What? Yeah. What do you mean? I was just literally going to let you finish, and like Logan's like, "Oh man, I have to go soon," and like, yeah, that's what we're leaving you with, guys. Yeah, hey guys, guess what? You know how everyone's like, Game Pass, the best deal in gaming. You know,
Game Pass Ultimate is the best deal in gaming.
Remember when Microsoft like couldn't do anything wrong, and now they can't seem to do anything right? Oh my god. Anyway, make sure you guys like and do all of that stuff, and we'll see y'all next week. Bye. Get out of here, Craig.